Why is Deepak Chopra in the Epstein files? The House Oversight Committee shared a ton of documents that the Epstein estate had turned over to them. I was shocked to learn that Chopra had a fairly long-running email correspondence with Epstein, covered at least 2 years. I looked at all the emails and began to ask myself the question, why is Deepak Chopra emailing Jeffrey Epstein? Chopra went to a dinner party with Epstein and Woody Allen and his wife Soon-Yi Previn, and they gossiped afterwards about what had happened at the dinner party. They gossiped a bit about Marla Maples when Chopra asked Epstein if he knew Marla Maples, and they discussed a story that is sadly true about an assistant to Maples who turned out had been stealing her shoes because he had a sexual foot fetish. And then as I read through their correspondence, I kept asking myself, what is their connection about? In some ways, it looked like Chopra was looking to Epstein to connect him with scientists that could help him with his work around consciousness. It also appears that Epstein had real interest in doing a board game and meditation app with Chopra, which, as far as I'm aware, never came to light. And it seemed like Chopra turned to Epstein as a kind of confidant, sharing bits about dealing with his critics and what he was doing with his life, and surprisingly, signing his emails with "Love Deepak" and lots of heart emojis. I had no idea that Deepak was such a fan of emojis. You might also wonder, as did I, whether Chopra ever asked Epstein about the allegations around Epstein. At this time, Epstein had already pleaded guilty to state law crimes for solicitation of a minor for prostitution. And this was the sweetheart plea deal that Alex Acosta, then the U.S. attorney in Florida, had negotiated with Epstein and his lawyers, and that prevented so many other victims from having their stories come to light and receiving justice. At this point, Virginia Giuffre, one of the victims who was most vocal, had sued Ghislaine Maxwell for defamation. And Epstein had given a deposition that was at the time under seal. It's not clear how much was public, but there were a lot of information swirling around Epstein. There's only one exchange with Epstein and Chopra about this, in which Epstein forwards a story about somebody who recanted. And Chopra writes back, "Did she also drop her civil suit?" Epstein replies, "Yep." And Chopra says, "Good. That's it." That's the extent to which Chopra, in this correspondence, appears to have engaged with the question of what was going on with Epstein. The end of 2018 is the last email that we have between them. It's at this time that the indefatigable Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald publishes a multi-part investigation that brings all sorts of attention back on Epstein. Some 6 months later, Epstein is arrested, and then, as is well known, a few months later, dies in jail, awaiting trial. We do know, though, that in April of that year, so after Julie's story had broken, before the arrest, there is a lunch date on the calendar in April between Epstein and Chopra. In response to all of this, Deepak Chopra issued a statement in which he invoked patient-doctor privilege, claiming that his relationship with Epstein was professional, in which he was assisting Epstein with sleep issues and teaching him meditation. All I can say is that nothing in the correspondence that is available to us suggests that this is their relationship. In fact, the only talk of sleep is when Chopra, in one of his emails, complains about jet lag, and Epstein offers the unbelievably novel insight that he could take some Benadryl to overcome jet lag. So it's a curious invocation when the relationship isn't purely professional in the way that Chopra is describing it. Epstein did not appear, based on these emails, to be strictly a client, a patient of his. And so it begs the question, did Chopra know much more about what was going on? Did he see young women at Epstein's mansion? I did an article about this, and I presented all of this as a matter of fact. Here's the email correspondence. Here's how they talk to each other. And I drew no conclusions. What was interesting is how people took very divisive positions. On the one hand, there were those who said, well, the answer is obvious. Deepak Chopra is a pedophile. There's no evidence of that in this emails. The other end of the spectrum was the people that said, he's done nothing wrong. He's an amazing spiritual teacher. I've learned a lot from him, so I can't criticize in any way. And then there were those in the middle whose view is that it appears, based on this, that Deepak was willing to look the other way, to ignore parts of Epstein's life in service of what Epstein could give him in the form of professional connections. And so if I am to draw a conclusion based on this body of work, and admit it's a partial body of information, is that it's really unflattering when you've decided that somebody's history as a sex trafficker and pedophile isn't a deal breaker, and you're willing to overlook it to advance your career. It also doesn't make any sense to me. Chopra had plenty of connections. He knew other scientists. He's incredibly famous. So what he thought he could get from Epstein that he couldn't have found some other way, to me, remains a bit of a mystery. And to date, Chopra has offered nothing else on this matter, saying that he would only talk to authorized officials. And so all we're left with is speculation about the full extent of their relationship. And from there, I'll let you draw whatever conclusions you'd like to draw.